Bonjour, ça va, un plaisir, toujours un plaisir. Très bien, très bien. Thank you, please take your seats. Excellencies, Eminences, dear participants, it's a pleasure to welcome you once again to 2024 with no more wars, no more trouble. One early set of conclusions that I'm about to draw is that, and I think that this is a fantastic asset. The consequences of the pandemic, we have discussed the future. Your Excellencies, Your Eminences, dear participants, it's a pleasure to welcome you once again at the Commission headquarters for our Article 17 dialogue with religious leaders. Let me first of all wish you all a happy new year, a prosperous and healthy 24, with no more wars, no more trouble on our continent and across the world. We are gathering today in this last high-level meeting of Article 17 for the current political cycle, but one early set of conclusions that I'm about to draw is that this dialogue has really proven its value and its worth, and I think that this is a fantastic asset. An excellent framework to engage, and I very much hope certainty nowadays is a rare commodity in the European Union, but I very much hope that also in the new political cycle and in the next European Commission, this Article 17 dialogue will continue to be central in our deliberations. In previous dialogues on other occasions, we have discussed, of course, you remember, those of you who were there, the consequences of the pandemic. We have discussed the future of Europe. We have discussed the impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And a few weeks ago, in December last year, with some of you, we also had an extraordinary, special meeting to discuss the impact of the unfolding crisis in the Middle East following the Hamas terrorist attack against Israel. All these dialogues have now clearly shown that there is a lot of harvest in these proceedings. And I think that we have every reason to be collectively proud of the fact that we managed to get to the heart of the spiritual charge around policy. Policy is not done in a political vacuum. We cannot produce policy in conditions of laboratory. We need an ability to exchange, to fertilize our thinking and our actions, and this framework is particularly useful for that. Let me, to kickstart our discussions today, offer you a big picture view of every major development in policy that has been shaping the European Union and this current political cycle. And then I would very much hope that we can collectively assess the impact of all these events in what is now universally known as our European way of life. But the difference of previous dialogues with the one that we're holding today is that we thought that this should be a macroscopic, eagle's view approach of what is around us, rather than policy, segmented policy focused. And I'm delighted, of course, that I am joined not only with my colleagues from the Commission, but with Frans van Dalen, whom everybody knows by now, who is our special envoy for defending and promoting religious freedom across the world. So let me start the first of this family of issues that I would like to discuss with you today is what is now called the geopolitical European Union. I'm preaching to the converted when I say that this world has faced unprecedented, historic, tectonic geopolitical shifts. If you go back to the summer of 2019, when Ursula von der Leyen obtained the confidence of the European Parliament in her speech to the MEPs in Strasbourg, she was describing a world which is no longer there. So much has changed since then. But if there is something that has remained a key feature of our work, is that this belief that the European Union should strengthen our role as a geopolitical actor and not anymore as a security consumer, but as a security provider to our people and to the world. And of course, the fundamental feature of this geopolitical shift was Ukraine. The war in Ukraine will continue to dominate the European Union policy agenda for the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, there is no sign of an imminent settlement, peace, or way out of the war. Ukraine, today and tomorrow, will continue to need our support. And the future of this proud, independent nation, their future as a country, and their future as a people, basically depends on us, on the West, and on the European Union, on our ability to sustain our support for Ukraine for the long run, both economically and militarily. In this geopolitical commission, other than the war and the geopolitical shift, we had to face another paradox. The paradox being the emergence of a multipolar world with many more players claiming a share of the global governance. But the paradox being that their claims for influence are not based on a rules-based order, but rather on power. They claim a stake in global governance by invoking power. And very often we in Europe, we feel very alone in defending a rules-based multilateral order, because we continue to think that this is the cement of global governance, not power, and not exercising one's right over somebody else's. So last December, with some of you, we did discuss in this context the situation in the Middle East. We continue to believe in this building that you, as religious leaders, can play a crucial role in this context. The peace that we need, peace between Israel and the Palestinians, is a strategic imperative. It is not an imperative only for them, but is also for us, for the entire region and for the world. And the third element of the geopolitical shift was clearly the increased demand for the European Union to become a more active actor in security and defense. The Europe of defense is not yet a feature of our institutional architecture. We need to accelerate, we need to acquire defense capabilities, we need to facilitate military mobility, and we need to strengthen our defense industry. All these are conditions, pieces of the overall puzzle of a Europe of defense that we badly need. Let me now come to another area of policy that I think is relevant to our discussion, which is enlargement. The European Union, by definition, cannot and should not become a system that talks to itself, should not become a deep and narrow reality that barricades itself from all those who aspire to be part of the family. And the fact that every country in the continent who are not members of the EU have now formally requested to join the EU is a major moral, political, geopolitical, and strategic priority for the European Union. That's why last November we presented, our leaders in the European Council validated a set of landmark decisions on enlargement. We recommended the opening of negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova, and we have also recommended the opening of EU accession negotiations with Bosnia and Herzegovina once the necessary degree of compliance with the membership criteria is achieved. Let me say that again, that this moral, geopolitical, political imperative I was referring to for the Union to be able to enlarge should not entail a situation where there will be shortcuts, where there will be discounts, where we will lower the threshold of requirements for joining the family in terms of rule of law, in terms of social and economic developments. Whoever aspires to join our union should assume the obligation to live, respect the rules, the principles, and the level of socio-economic development that shapes our union. This will be a merit-based process. The one who will be ready to cross the line will cross the line. But again, we want this to be an inclusive negotiation that could lead to merit-based results. We do not feel that enlargement should be about exclusion. All the contrary, it should be about opening up to those who want to be part of this historic project of European integration. Let me come now to a third area, which is the new EU Pact on Migration and Asylum. I know that this is an issue which is very dear to you, to all of you, and of course you all know that this is an issue that is becoming a cleavage in itself in our societies. It shapes the way we think, it shapes the way we vote, and is a major concern of Europeans. What I would like to share with you, also as an architect of these proposals, is that after decades of failures and after 4 years of negotiations, we finally were able to provide the European Union with a holistic, cohesive, comprehensive regulatory framework for migration and asylum. A system that ensures that the European Union will continue to be an asylum destination for those who flee war and discrimination and persecution, but at the same time, a union also that is able to control our external border and to ensure that those who have no legal reason to be under our protection should not stay with us. This is a major, and I measure my words, a historic achievement, one of the legacy elements of this Commission. I many times have discussed these issues with you, bilaterally, collectively, and I know that many aspects of migration policy bother you. Let me tell you that they bother me as well. But what we do not like, or rather, what we did not like about migration policy in Europe was not because of Europe. It was because of the cost of non-Europe. Everything that disturbed us, annoyed us, the shame of Moria in Lesbos, Lampedusa, Calais, everything that was so un-European was due to the fact that there was no European framework for migration and asylum. And now we're finally having one. So I would respectfully ask for your understanding of these new rules. I'm very eager to offer information, ample information, discussion on these new rules. I saw here and there certain criticism on the pact only hours after it has been agreed. I think it's not fair. I think we should give the pact a chance. This is a European regulatory framework financed by EU resources, managed by EU institutions together with our member states, and I have the full conviction that it will work. The fourth and the fifth policy areas that shape this mandate, and I'll take them together, is the so-called twin transition. First, the transition towards a greener Europe. You know that Europe will become the first decarbonized continent in the world by 2050, and we have already legislated intermediate emission reduction targets by 2030, with 55 less emissions than the ones we were sending up in the air when Kyoto started. These are realistic targets, and this decarbonization of European economy is happening and will continue. Europe will lead by example in the area of fighting climate change, and we have the backing of our citizens in doing this and of younger generations. I do not need to explain to you that we do not longer live in a climate crisis situation. We live in a climate emergency. And every day that we spend postponing or not implementing these very clear commitments for the green transition will be at the expense of younger generations. Same thing for the other transition, the digital transition. In this political cycle, the European Union has managed, again for the first time, to produce a European way of digital governance. We have two landmark legislative texts, the Digital Single Act and the Digital Market Act, Digital Services Act and the Digital Market Act, that for the first time insert a certain order in the way that technology platforms manage information, data, trade, buying, and commercial preferences. We are getting this right, but there is one big thing that is also left to be regulated, although there again we made a head start, which is the transition to the algorithmic reality that artificial intelligence will bring in our economy and in our society. there again, the role of religious leaders would be crucial. We need to take this discussion of artificial intelligence out of the hands of software engineers, out of the hands of people who work in basements. We need to have artificial intelligence dealt with in the light of the day, under democratic scrutiny, with openness in society, and with a firm conviction that we will not surrender the fundamentals of our lives, the way we think, the way we buy, the way we exchange information, the way we vote, and ultimately the way we think, to some obscure software engineers escaping democratic and societal control. A final consideration is about other two landmark developments in this Commission that I think you would have noticed, but also have a very clear impact on the daily lives of Europeans. First is, of course, the unprecedented decision to create the Next Generation EU Fund. After decades of sterile debates and an approach which was rather a taboo around the notion of common lending, for the first time the European Union as a union can leverage community funds to produce an investment potential on the basis of common borrowing for our member states to come symmetrically out of the economic crisis that the pandemic has created. This is the first time in EU history, and France knows a lot about it because he had to fight the worst phase of the financial crisis without the tools that we're having now. For the first time in EU history, the European Union does not delegate the responsibility to individual member states, tapping them in the back and saying, try to survive as much as you can, we'll be there if needed. Now we do this on behalf of the 27 with the Next Generation EU. I think it's a fantastic opportunity, a game changer, a Hamiltonian moment, as some federalists would say. And the final point, also important, is the creation in these years of an EU, a real EU health union, which not only has to do with finding the pandemic, the vaccines, the mobility certificate. It's not only about firefighting in the area of health, it's also about building, as architects, a new regulatory framework that would shield the European Union against any possible health threat in the future. We have now created a new European authority for health emergency, which is called HERA. We have substantially reinforced the mandates of our EU Health Agency, the European Medical Agencies, and the European Centre for Disease Control. We have presented and implementing the most ambitious plan, European plan against cancer, bringing together resources of 4 billion euros. We have introduced a proposal on creating an EU health data space to facilitate access to health data by patients, but also to catalyze research. This is another legacy point for this Commission. So there you are. I wanted to offer you this big picture view of what kept us busy these 5 years. You would understand that in all these areas, your role, both as leaders, but also as representing the people of your faith, matters a lot to us. And that's why, with the President, many times we have discussed of the value of this process, but also on the potential to use your thoughts, your contributions, as fertilizers for policy development. In few months, in 5 months to be precise, Europeans will go to vote. And it will be the first time that they vote after all this crisis, in the middle of 2 wars. And it will matter a lot the way they will assess the things we are discussing today. And there are 2 ways to consider this democratic process of accountability. One is to say, okay, we know better. I mean, it's so concentrated brain power in the institution, so we will always find a way. That's not our preferred way. The preferred way is to listen to what people have to say with their vote and make sure that we understand the praise and the blame. We'll be very appreciative for the praise, but we should also be very serious about the blame. And we will owe answers to those who are asking questions on European policies. And in shaping these answers, in shaping this Europe of solutions, it's a real privilege to have you here this morning. It's a real privilege to listen to you. We will engage directly into our discussions, but as it's customary, let us also hear from our colleagues across the street, the European Parliament. Otmar Karas could not be with us today, but he has sent us a video. So let's listen to Otmar, then Franz, and then you. Thank you again for coming.
Just look at me.